Thanks for checking out this video. This is the 1993 video for the 1990s horror movie superlative series that I am doing with your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, a good friend of mine. His channel's linked in the description of this video. So watch this video, get my picks for 1993, then go to his channel, watch his video. Make sure on both of our channels you subscribe, you hit the notification bell button, like our videos, all that stuff, because that kind of just helps us out, and it's a great way to repay us for putting out, this free entertainment for you. Also, provide comments on both of our videos about what you thought would be your picks for this year, or really what are your picks. Then come to my community tab on my page and vote for whose picks you like the most, or whose picks kind of lined up with yours the most, whatever you feel like. Just a fun, friendly competition. So let's go ahead and get into the picks for 1993 for me. Most amazing. This is not going to be a big surprise if you know the films that came out. Jurassic Park. Some people may be like, is it really horror because it's not like super horror? I think it's definitely horror, especially because of that T-Rex scene, especially because of the Velociraptor scene, especially also because of the scene where, I forget specifically what the dinosaur is called, the one with the frills that come out and it spits poison at the guy who was trying to steal the embryos. And then it eats him in the truck. Yeah, there is horror in this film, and it's very horror. Now, I do wonder what would the film have been like if it was directed by someone else, because some of the other people who I think were potentially going to direct it, I think Richard Donner was one of the potential people, and I know that Tim Burton, and most interesting to me, Joe Dante. I actually had virtually met Joe Dante and got to ask him about what he would have done with the film, and he said that he was going to, obviously lean more towards the horror of it, and also he just really didn't want Steven Spielberg to take the main character of, I forget what his name is, the guy who kind of built the whole island and, has the white outfit on and walks with the cane. He didn't want him to be sanitized too much as a character because the original source material by Michael Crichton, which is a wonderful book, and so was his Lost World. I didn't see the Lost World movie, but apparently in that original book, I read it a long time ago, he was much worse of a person. So I think he did get a little sanitized in the film, but the film's amazing. I mean, Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum, the performances are outstanding. The filmmaking's outstanding. It looks great because it's Steven Spielberg, obviously. But there's so many great horror elements to it. I mean, no one can deny how scary the moment the T-Rex gets loose is, and how everyone's trapped in these two little Jeeps. And it seems like they're goners. The guy who gets eaten off the toilet, that's a fun one too. But it's so well done from a horror perspective. Tension is high. The atmosphere is very creepy with the dinosaurs on the loose, and another big scene being the one in the kitchen where the kids are trying to hide and the Velociraptors are opening the door and right there near them as they're trying not to make any sound. I mean, some people may not say it's a horror film, but I think it's definitely a horror film, and it's a phenomenal film, and for that reason, it is my most amazing pick for 1993, Jurassic Park. Now the best so bad it's good film. That has to go for a film, and I'm going to give you points, big-time points, if you comment and say that you actually know this film, have known this film. Freaked. This is a very underrated film, so I could see people putting it for underrated, but for me, it plays more of like a so bad it's good. It's not like a well-done film in the sense of like it being a good story, good film, but it's a lot of fun. It's very zany, and Screamin' Mad George does practical effects for it, which are outstanding. Yes, I have I bought this a long time ago. This is the DVD with the slipcover, and I'll even show you under here if you've never seen the film, just to give you an idea of the types of individuals or creatures that are kind of in this. Screamin' Mad George, it looks like his stuff. It's a really zany film that is intentionally zany. It's very over the top. It's leans so heavily into like the ridiculous aspect of comedy. Alex Winter, this was a film that he had worked on. He doesn't just act in it. I believe he was involved in some of the script writing. But he put this out there. It didn't do that well, but it's become a little bit of a cult classic for some people, and it's just fun. The practical effects is what it's basically all about. It's literally about this self-absorbed celebrity who gets asked by a kind of corporation who is doing terrible things to the environment to kind of clean up their mess, in a sense, from a PR standpoint. So he goes to the place where they're polluting with toxic waste, and he runs afoul of Randy Quaid's character, who is basically a freak maker. If you've ever seen the film Freak Maker with Donald Pleasance, it seems a little inspired by that. But he basically has like a carnival kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It looks like it's kind of like a swampy area. And he's taking people who kind of wander into his area and making them into a part of his show, in essence. Literally changing them to do that. It's very over the top. It's very ridiculous, but it is a lot of fun, especially when I was talking about, the practical effects are the best part. Super silly, zany, all that stuff. So it might not be for everyone, but for me, I really did enjoy it. And that's why it's my pick for the best so bad it's good film. Freaked. Definitely see it if you haven't. Just at least once, even if you don't like it. Just you'll have seen it then. Now going for my most WTF film, and this one is very WTF, Body Melt. If you've never seen Body Melt, which I think is available through either Vinegar Syndrome or Severin Films, I can't remember which one it is, but one of them has an actual release of it. It has a big feel of old school Peter Jackson, like Dead Alive Peter Jackson, but it's not good like that. It's actually just very over the top. It's very random. There's a lot of random stuff that happens in this film, but there is body melt. That's what it's all about. It's all about the body melt. So it's literally about this company that's making like workout supplements that actually end up doing terrible things to people, including body melt. But it's not always that. Sometimes it's just like they lose it and they kill themselves or they kill other people. But there's so many, like at every turn in this film, there's just things happening that come out of nowhere and they just make no sense. Like there's these very weird, almost mutant-like rural folk that pop up in the film, and you're kind of like, what do they even have to do with this story? It's just all over the place. It's not well written or anything, and it's got that kind of like zany, over-the-top kind of slapsticky feel that like Dead Alive did, that Peter Jackson was doing. So I'm wondering, because this is also an Australian film, wondering if it was heavily inspired by that kind of style, which, interestingly enough, Peter Jackson, when he did Dead Alive, was heavily inspired by the style of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead. So, body melt, in a way, potentially inspired by Evil Dead. But this is a movie that has to be seen to be believed because there are so many WTF moments. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Body Melt, my pick for most WTF. Now, best gore. There weren't a lot of films that could fit in this category, in my opinion, for 93, but I pick Ticks. This is another one that I think is available through Vinegar Syndrome. Has a fun cast. It has a young Alfonso Ribeiro, a young Seth Green, and Clint Howard. Also Rance Howard, the lesser known of the Howard brothers. All those people in it make for a really fun time. It's not a good film. It's very over the top, as you would assume from a horror film called Ticks. It is literally about mutated ticks that kill people. And the majority of the people it's going after are kind of like these troubled youths who are on this program to go get in touch with the wilderness, that type of thing. That's been used in films a lot. And yeah, these mutant ticks show up and people are getting killed. It actually has pretty good gore. And it's not just gore from the standpoint of like blood and guts with the people when they're getting bitten, when they're getting messed up, but also there's a lot of green goo that is related to the ticks themselves. And the design of the ticks actually look pretty gross and gnarly, and it enhances the film. So I really like it for that reason. It's a very fun time. I could see someone picking this as their best so bad it's good. But for me, it was definitely the best gore of 1993, Ticks. Now going on to the most unique. I'm going to go with a very early film of Guillermo del Toro's, Chronos. If you've never seen Chronos, yes, it's a slow film. Yes, it's subtitled, so you do have to watch, actually read while you're watching it. It has Ron Perlman in it, which is nowadays you look at that and you're like, oh my gosh, that had Ron Perlman in it, kind of odd, but really well done story, very unique in the sense that it basically is a vampire film, but it's not a vampire film. It's basically about an older gentleman and his granddaughter and their relationship, and how that relationship ends up changing a lot, focusing more on him as he's going through a vampiric type change, because he's found this little ornament called Chronos. And what it does is it kind of embeds this little stinger type thing in him and makes him need blood. But it's not done in at all a straight up vampire type way. It's done very much in its own way. It's very emotional film. It is a slow film. It's very nuanced. So for that reason, I'm going to say it's super unique, because we've had so many entries in the vampire subgenre of horror, that a lot of it feels very samey, and a lot of it feels like it's borrowing from each other. Chronos does not. Chronos stands by itself and is very, very unique. It kind of sets up its own thing. Plus, it looks phenomenal because it's Guillermo del Toro. It's got great directing, has very good cinematography, and the acting's really good. So it's definitely worth seeing. So my most unique film for 1993, Guillermo del Toro's Chronos. Most overrated, Leprechaun. I bought the DVD collection. It was like $10 or something at Best Buy, 8 films. I see why it was that cheap. I had seen Leprechaun, just the first one, some years ago. And I remember being like, okay, like it was kind of like a so bad it's good type film. And I could see people putting this as so bad it's good for 93, but I just don't think it's very good, to be honest. Like, Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun, I think, does a good job, and his one-liners are sometimes fun, but it really goes over the top with that stuff. It's just ridiculous. It just gets boring after a while. The interesting thing about this film, though, is this was kind of like early on Jennifer Aniston, where she kind of got things going in her career, so it's kind of funny to see her in that. Also, the guy, I forget his name, the guy who played Francis in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So it's cool to see those things, but there's not a whole lot of material for this film. It's basically about a leprechaun who's trying to kill people because they have his gold. And they just throw so many one-liners in there, and it's just kind of boring to me. That's just my opinion. I understand why people might like it, but that's why I'm picking Leprechaun as my most overrated film of 1993. Sorry for anyone who's a Leprechaun fan. Then coming to the final category, most underrated. And for this one, I have to go with Return of the Living Dead 3. This is a film I don't hear people talking about nearly as much as they should. It looks phenomenal. I believe it was shot by Brian Yuzna. I think he was the director on this one. Basically, the premise is, obviously, it's in the franchise of the Return of the Living Dead films, which a lot of people talk about 1 and 2, but more people need to talk about 3, because it's about a guy who becomes aware of this government experiment that's kind of zombifying dead people, and he loses his girlfriend. So he uses this technology to resurrect his girlfriend, and things don't really go that well. And it really kind of gets on a different level than what you've seen in the prior Return of the Living Dead films. It actually gets more emotional. It gets more thought-provoking. And it kind of ends up hitting this tone of the pain, like focusing on the pain that this woman is in, and how her lover, even though he had great intentions, has actually done terrible things to her, because it ultimately her body should, it's her body. She should be able to make the choice of whether she lives or dies, and he makes the choice for her. So I think there's something deeper there subtextually, if you see what I'm kind of hinting at. But I did do a full review on the film. I did a review on the first 3 Return of the Living Dead films. So I have those on my channel, actually in a playlist list for Return of the Living Dead reviews. But yeah, vastly underrated film. It's really well shot. It looks amazing. Great practical effects, all that stuff. And it's just, it's odd, but it's wonderful that it's an emotional entry in the franchise. So definitely check that out. Return of the Living Dead 3, my most underrated. So hopefully you like these picks. Like I said, go over and check out the video of the same name on your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete's channel, which is linked in my description. Like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell button, all that stuff for our channels. We really appreciate the support. And thanks for participating in this. Also, thanks for watching this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.